Hello everyone, welcome to the Totally Well Show. I'm your host, Joyce Strong. The Totally Well Show is a place where we get curious, ask questions, and explore everything to do with health, wellness, fitness, and all the things it takes to help you live the highest quality, most fulfilling life. I'm here today with my guest, Kristen Lamarre. Welcome, Kristen.
Hello.
Kristen's a yoga instructor and someone who's been kind of in the same circle as I have for a lot of years, and I just didn't know it. So I know the Lamarre family name is popular because my kids went to school with some of them. Kristen has a website, KristenLamarre.com, and another website, SolarFlowSUP.com, and practices in more than one location. So first I want to ask you some questions about you.
Sure.
Where did you grow up? I know it wasn't Groton.
Nope, I grew up in Westford,
Yeah.
and I now live in Ayr, so didn't really stray too far from where I grew up.
Yeah, and where did you go to high school?
I went to Westford Academy.
Yeah, and then college.
I went to Plymouth State in Plymouth, New Hampshire.
Uh-huh.
Always missing the mountains.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
beautiful up there.
I see a common theme. So what got you into yoga?
I actually was teaching high school right out of college. I taught high school for 3 years.
What subject?
I taught biology and chemistry.
Okay, yeah.
So at that time, it was kind of a stressful job, and there was a lot going on. And I had known about yoga, but I didn't really do it that often or practice that often. Mm-hmm. And I was on Pinterest when I probably should have been, doing other things. And I found this kind of circle, the wheel of the sun salutations, and it just really piqued my interest. And I had never kind of seen that connection with like the moving and the breathing and all of that. So I went home that day and pushed all the stuff out of the way in my living room and taught myself the sun salutations. And from that moment, it was just like something clicked. It was like, this is something I need to do.
Oh, wow.
So I started practicing daily and learning the poses.
Just on your own?
Yeah. So I actually mostly practiced completely on my own until I did my yoga teacher training.
Wow.
So
did you play sports when you were younger in school?
I did. I played field hockey. I was a gymnast, and I also played lacrosse. So I've always been pretty active.
Yeah.
And that was at a time where I wasn't as active because it was kind of after college and my first big person job. So I was busy, and I was not really finding as much time, and I wasn't in the mountains anymore, so I wasn't hiking and skiing as much. Mm-hmm. So it kind of came at a perfect time where I was looking for a way to move my body, and I didn't have like an outlet like I had always had my whole life.
So it's fair to say that that fitness and movement has always been part of your world.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Very important.
Now
to
I
me.
know why you're so connected with Sean Clark at Rebel Fit, because that's how, he's like, you just move.
Yeah. We used to have all kinds of conversations when I taught up there. Just move your body.
Yeah.
Just park your car and walk in. You don't have to get like the closest spot to the grocery store or whatever it is, and take the stairs instead of the escalator or the elevator. And just incorporating it into your day-to-day life is super important.
Do you ever do any of the other sports at all? Or?
I don't.
Yeah.
I think gymnastics fit quite well into yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, which is funny. I was never the most flexible person. And my coach used to make me cry like daily, trying to make me do splits.
Yeah. How tall are you?
I'm 5'8".
So you're tall for a gymnast.
Yeah, right? Yeah, that's true. I loved it though, so it was good.
Yeah.
And now we still talk all the time, and she's just like, you're more flexible now than you were when you did gymnastics. I'm like, I know. So I've actually gone to the gym and taught yoga to the gymnasts too, and they really like it, which is cool.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So you did yoga school training. That takes a lot of hours, isn't it? Like 200 hours?
Yeah, so it's a 200-hour training.
Yeah.
So
Where do you do that?
I did mine in Costa Rica. So they kind of had two different models that they'll do the training. Some of them are like months long, every other weekend, like all weekend long. What I did was more of a immersive intensive type. So I actually went to Costa Rica for a month and did my training down there for
what's involved in
days.
What's involved in the training?
Lots and lots of yoga, and not only just kind of the practice that you see, the asana practice. That's actually just one limb of yoga.
What's the name?
Asana is like the poses.
Okay.
What people most traditionally think of as yoga is kind of these poses that you do and these movements, but there's actually another 7 limbs. So things like meditation and different kind of ways of living your life in a more yogic, if you will, yeah, in a more yogic way. Definitely in the West here, it's more the asana, the movement. Meditation too is becoming a lot more mainstream and popular, which is awesome because meditation is so important.
Mm-hmm. Is that a part of your?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yoga, even for me, and I think a lot of other people, becomes a moving meditation. That linking of your movements with your breath. Mm-hmm. You can't really be like thinking about what you're having for dinner or your to-do list. You get into this just space of being rather than just the constant chatter in your mind.
I probably say this to every guest I have on here, but that's what hockey is to me.
Yeah, no, I think that people have, like, so many people have different ways of meditating and of kind of shutting off their brain, and it doesn't have to be.
You can't possibly think of anything else when you're doing that, when you're trying to, like, put all those parts together, not fall.
Move a stick and hit a puck.
And then you still have the wind on your face and, like, the physical sensations and the sounds, and,
Definitely.
Yeah. So I have very little experience with doing yoga, here and there, little bits of it. Mm-hmm. And what I know I've talked with you about this before, but I'd like to help our audience understand more about how there are different types of yoga, and you've been trained in a certain way, and then I guess you don't ever stop training, right? You continue to learn.
So there's.
Can you help me understand, the different types of yoga that there are? And
yeah, so I think on a more basic level, the yoga that people most often see in practice is a vinyasa style. So it's linking your breath and your movements. So kind of one breath, one movement. Sometimes you'll hold poses for a couple of breaths.
And that's called vinyasa?
Vinyasa,
okay.
Yep. So vinyasa is, that linking of breath and movement. But then even in that kind of realm of vinyasa classes, there might be power classes, which would be more dynamic, more energetic, sometimes more challenging poses, more challenging sequences.
Is it a quicker pace?
Sometimes a quicker pace as well.
Yeah.
Those classes sometimes also are heated, so you'd be doing them in a heated room, anywhere from, 80 degrees to like 105 for some types of yoga like that.
Yeah.
And then even in that realm of vinyasa, there's also kind of the other end of the spectrum, so the slower flow. So a sequence that's still flowing and moving with breath, but it's a little bit slower paced. Not quite as challenging, maybe for more beginners or people who are just starting to get into the practice or have had an injury or something like that, that you can still flow, but it's not quite as dynamic or vigorous as, say, a power class or even just like an all levels vinyasa even. And then even on the kind of totally other end of the spectrum, there's practices like yin yoga and restorative yoga, which are actually practices based more in stillness than movement. So restorative yoga, you're actually using kind of all these props, so blocks and bolsters and blankets, to let the body get really comfortable. So you're almost going for this space of not having sensation, not stretching or anything, and to totally let the body relax. So that's almost more of like a meditation. A lot of people will come to classes like that more for meditation and really relaxing into the body. Yin is similar in that you're still using those props to support the body, but you actually are looking for sensation. So you're holding still poses maybe for 3 to 5 minutes, but you're, like, a lot of them will focus on hips and shoulders, a place where a lot of us hold tension.
Got it, yeah.
So it's even that, it's really anyone can do practices like that, so.
So how can you help people understand what they need if they're out looking for a yoga, beside that it's got to match up with your budget and with your time schedule and geography and all of that? How does a person get started?
I would suggest finding a studio in your area and starting with a beginner class. And just going, because that type of class will be very focused on actually teaching you the poses, the correct way to do them, really breaking things down a little bit more. And that's a good baseline to start with. If you're a pretty active person, you could just try an all levels vinyasa style class. A lot of times that will be also geared towards kind of that middle ground, so beginners.
By all levels means anybody can come. It's like an open,
Yeah. So it'll be taught in a way where there's kind of like bus stops to get off of, if you can imagine that.
Oh, I
so
like
you
that,
kind of like stop. You're like, okay, if you're comfortable here, stay here. If you want to deepen the posture, move here. If you want to deepen from there, move here.
Oh, nice.
So there's places and variations to make the practice your own.
Yeah.
In a class like that. And in a beginner class, it's a good place to start because you'll learn those poses and you'll learn that kind of baseline, and then you can always deepen from there.
So I love hearing new terms. Getting off at bus stops is a good one. Yeah, that's good.
That's the way I like to describe it.
Yeah, it's perfect. Did you learn in your formal training or along the way anything to, you know, what I do as a nurse and nutrition coach, anything to do with nutrition and, you know, the feeding your body, anything like that? Or is that things you've done on your own?
Yeah, that's more with stuff I've done on my own and experimenting with what makes me feel best and all of that.
Do you ever help people with that in your encounters with them?
Not formally.
Yeah.
No.
Because I could imagine people see you and ask you because you're a model of health, the way you look and move.
Oh, thanks.
So maybe informally you can, you know, say, well, here's what I do, or is that
I mean,
more like,
I wouldn't really suggest. I bet if I could talk, probably the best suggestion that I make is just listening to your body. I mean, if you are eating, for lack of better terminology, crap all day long, you're probably going to feel like crap.
I like that term. You know, Mark Hyman has that FLC syndrome he always talks about, Dr. Hyman.
Oh, I haven't heard that.
Yeah, I feel like crap.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, so I mean, if you're eating processed foods and all of that, you're probably not going to feel great.
Yeah.
So I guess the biggest suggestion I usually make is just eating things in their most pure form if possible, rather than eating a bag of chips. Like, eat some celery and hummus. Or carrots and hummus or something. But
so where do you like to do your yoga?
So I really love practicing outside.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll practice inside, of course, in the winter when it's freezing. But for the most part, I really like being outside and surrounded by nature.
And that's who you've been anyway, right?
Yeah.
You don't mind the cold weather?
I don't love it. New England born and bred, still can't handle the cold, but I'm getting better about it as I get older.
Do you ever do yoga outside in the cold?
Mostly just for, pictures for the internet. Not formally practicing outside.
Okay.
When it's this cold, I usually practice in front of my wood stove inside in my living room.
Yeah.
But
and then in studios and
in studios in the
groups.
area and Yep.
So do you work with, and I know that I talked with you and Sean at Rebel Fit about this, but I wasn't quite clear on how all that worked. You just mentioned that with the gymnasts you did some stuff. So you do work with gyms or with other health practices?
Yeah.
Or fitness practices
so
and collaborate?
I teach at tons of different places. So I teach at studios, traditional yoga studios. I also teach at different gyms.
Yeah.
I teach at a YMCA.
Okay.
And then I also do different kind of events, more like on my own.
Yeah.
So like with the gymnast, that was one where I just kind of went in one day because my old coach was like, the gymnasts would love yoga. Come in and teach. So just like went in and taught them kind of like one day of yoga. I teach I actually teach at a winery in the area.
Really?
So we do like a wine and flow, which is super fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we do yoga outside. They have a beautiful patio that overlooks the vineyard, and we do yoga there, and then we move inside and we kind of do a wine tasting, and it's a great kind of community feel where you're not just going to class and then leaving.
Yeah.
Like you're doing a class together and then you go inside and we all chat and mingle, and so things like that are really cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Maybe with Confident Women Consortium, you could do some yoga or some of it. I'm thinking maybe the hockey players.
Oh, for sure.
Have you ever done with a team?
I haven't. I don't think.
Hockey players need it.
But I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. I'd love to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good thinking. Good thinking. So let's see. What else did I want to ask you? We defined it. Well, we started to go to the outdoor thing, and then you were telling me about Solar Flow SUP. And I was like, what? And Solar Flow SUP. So stand-up paddleboard.
Yes.
You had told me about stand-up paddleboard before, but I didn't put those two things, that you're actually doing yoga on a
stand-up
paddleboard.
Yeah. So I do teach different lessons and things like that as well for
So
stand-up
first of all,
paddling.
how'd you get into stand-up paddleboard?
I actually grew up on a lake
Okay.
in Westford, so I grew up on the water all the time, canoeing and kayaking, and I don't really remember why. I think we were at Sam's Club, and I was like in either my last year of high school or first year of college.
Yeah.
My mom would always go to Sam's Club, and they had this like giant paddle board for sale there. I was like, that would be really cool. I want one. And it was, and so I bought it.
Yeah.
And like this was in March, so I didn't even get to use it until that summer, and I just fell in love with it immediately.
Yeah.
It's such a different experience standing on a board on the water than it is like sitting in a kayak or in a canoe, because
Yeah.
you're paddling around and you can see down into the water.
Yeah.
So you can like see what's underneath you.
Yeah.
And I just fell absolutely in love with it.
I've never tried it. Is it hard?
It's easier than you'd think.
Okay.
People are always surprised.
How do you get up? How do you stand up without tipping it over?
They're surprisingly stable. I mean, we do yoga on them, so they're much more stable than you think they would be. And people are always shocked the first time they come out, if they've never been on a board before, that they're like, oh, this is a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. They're like 10 feet long.
There's one paddle.
Yep, just one paddle.
Yeah.
So
10
similar to
feet?
canoeing in that
Yeah.
way. So they're like
Yeah.
10 plus feet long usually.
Do you bend your knees?
Yeah.
You have to bend your knees, yeah.
Yeah, it's good to keep your knees soft.
Yeah.
It's whenever you stand up and lock your knees in fear that then you're going to go over.
Okay, yeah.
I always tell people, if you're going to go low, go low. So bend your knees and get low.
Go, whoa.
Because then your center of gravity is lower. And you
I'm going to use that in hockey with the kids. I like it. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
All my little weird catchphrases.
Yeah, you got them.
So yeah, definitely not as hard as people think it's going to be.
So when you're doing the yoga, do you not use the paddle, or you still have it in hand?
So usually when we start doing the yoga, we stop and we actually anchor, so we're not blowing around anywhere. And then the boards I have are actually designed for doing yoga on them. So they have just a little bungee sort of on one of the rails on the side, and you just slide the paddle right in, so it's out of your way.
They're
and then
designed for doing yoga?
Yeah.
Like somebody actually came up with this idea? You didn't just like...
I didn't just make it up on my own. People were doing it.
Oh my gosh.
But
I can't even
it
imagine.
kind of all stemmed from, we have a raft at my mom's house, and I used to practice yoga out on the raft.
Yeah.
And it was kind of at the same time where I got into paddleboarding, so I was just like, why don't I do yoga on the board?
Yeah, yeah.
So then I started doing it on the board, and other people were too. I didn't make it up.
Yeah. I wonder, it must have started where, in California, Hawaii, I don't know.
I don't know, probably.
Yeah. So when you do it on the board, do you do it with a group of people?
Yeah.
So you're all anchored out there, floating around?
Yep.
How close do you get to each other?
Not close. Everyone has their own anchor, so they're usually, 4 or 5 feet away from each other.
Okay.
It only does anchor one end of the board, but even if wind is slightly blowing, it kind of ends up where the nose of their board, the front of their board is in the same direction.
Yeah.
So they're not just like floating around
Banging into each
willy-nilly.
other.
Yeah.
So do you, what was I going to ask? I forget what I was going to ask now. I'm just so fascinated with the whole image.
Well, you'll have to come out and do it. It's really fun.
I know. I'm going to have to now. Yeah. Oh, I know. I was going to ask you about does the wind ever cause you to not be able to practice if it gets windy?
if it's really bad,
like 20
it's
knots. What's it going to be?
It's challenging, but because they're anchored, and the pond I teach the classes at is pretty small, and there's kind of trees all around it, so the wind doesn't pick up too much. There's been a couple of times where it's a little bit windy, but you just kind of anchor everyone in a way that their board's going to be blowing in the same direction, and then they're all facing where I am, so it's not as big of a deal.
And you mentioned the ones around here where you go. Can you tell us?
Yeah, so I teach at Mirror Lake, which is in Devon's, Mass.
Okay.
And then this summer, I'm actually going to be doing it through Westford Parks and Rec at Forge Pond in Westford.
Wow, so nearby.
Yeah. So super close by.
That's crazy. I had another question for you. And a couple times you mentioned that you don't like to wear shoes. Where does that come from?
I just never liked wearing shoes.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, my mom would always have to be like, Kristen, grab your shoes, especially in the summer before I left the house. There were many times I would just leave the house and didn't have shoes on.
Yeah.
This still happens
Yeah.
now.
And do you have really like good calluses on your feet to protect them? I mean,
in the summer, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as soon as the weather starts like getting warmer and I can be outside barefoot, like I hike barefoot, I go for
Really?
walks with the dog barefoot. Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
It's nice. I think it's also just a way to even connect with the earth, which
Yeah.
makes me sound a little wonky, but
Well, I hear people use that term grounding,
Yeah.
and that has a lot to do with ions and.
yeah, there is some information on that.
Yeah.
That it's. I mean, I think being in nature in general is very important, very
Yeah.
calming, and if you can connect even more to it by being barefoot and walking barefoot, I think it's really good.
I like that term, forest bathing. Did you ever hear that?
I just heard of this
Yeah.
recently, actually. There's a place I teach at in the area, and a woman's coming and doing a forest bathing like thing, and I'm gonna go to it.
Yeah,
So-
and it feels that way when you're really out. You know, I mean, I'll
yeah.
even get that sensation on the rail trail. You know, walking on the rail trail or
Yeah.
rollerblading, but when you're deep in the woods and you're going and you're really, you know,
Yeah, you're
emerged
just
in it.
like
Yeah.
in the middle. Yeah, it's so nice.
Yeah.
Such a good feeling.
Yeah. So what else did I want to ask you about? What are some of the most fun experiences you've had with yoga?
Oh, that's a good question. I really love the events that I do. The one that we do at the winery. I also do one in Shirley. We do yoga under the covered bridge at the Bull Run.
Yeah.
So I think events like that are really special because it's not just like, oh, I run out the door, go to my yoga class, and then like run back home and do all the things I have to do in the day. Like people are really carving out a chunk of time to come and not only do yoga, but also kind of have that community and that connection.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that those are really special and really fun. I like those.
Yeah.
And I'm actually leading a retreat in January.
What's that?
In Belize. So I'm taking
What?
a group of people. So that's kind of that
How did
same
that happen?
feel. I have a good friend of mine who owns a yoga retreat company, and I started working with her a little bit with social media and helping her out with her social media last year, and I went on one of her retreats, and then it's been a dream that I've something I've wanted to do.
See, I didn't even know that it was a thing. So,
Yeah, it is a thing. It's pretty popular kind of in the yoga world.
yeah. How long is it for?
It's a week.
So is it done through like a travel agency or that's her business?
That's her business. She's been leading retreats for 10 years, and she just opened her company last year, I think a year ago.
Okay.
Now. And so she's helping facilitate other yoga teachers in leading retreats.
Okay.
So we're working with a place down in Belize, and they actually do many retreats throughout the year. So
How many people go in a group that you might lead?
Anywhere from, say, 10, 20 in that area.
Okay. And it's just one yoga instructor, one leader?
If there's upwards of a lot more people, then I'd have someone else coming with me. But since this is my first one, I forget exactly how many people I have, but not near 20.
So what do you do on a retreat? What's involved?
So yoga, lots of yoga. So we'll start every morning with yoga. So with a morning practice, an asana practice. There's different excursions we're going to do throughout the day. So not every day. Some days it'll just be, hanging out on the beach or snorkeling or something like that. But I think we're going to do maybe some sort of Mayan ruins that are down in Belize. We're going to do stand-up paddleboard yoga, of course,
Yeah.
stand-up paddling.
Yeah.
It's also near one of I think it's the second largest barrier reef, so there'll be really cool snorkeling. And then we have all of our meals together as well, so breakfast, lunch, dinner.
And these are
all
people that
included.
may or may not know each other ahead of time?
Yeah. So I think I know personally half the people coming, and I don't know the other half.
So that takes some courage for somebody to sign up to do
Yeah.
that kind of thing, yeah.
I think usually it ends up with people that know you or know of you, or they just want to go where the trip is going.
Yeah.
So I think
there are risk takers out there that'll just do something. Yeah.
It'll be fun though.
Yeah.
It'll be a good time.
It's so cool to hear this because so many of my clients are, they'll come to me for things like nutrition or weight loss, and they don't realize there's something missing in their lives. And to hear you talk about these kind of pop-up events,
Yeah.
is just like, wow, what a cool way to connect.
Yeah.
You know, to make a new friend. And if you do, great. If you don't, but it's just like a nice way to connect with somebody who has something in common with you, who
Definitely.
you know values.
You already
that.
know something.
So
that they like.
when you come up with the different events, like the wine and flow and the under the covered bridge, were those your ideas?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, the wine and flow was my idea, and I had emailed the vineyard, and then the owner was just like, yeah, let's do this. It'll be fun. So we did it monthly from May to September.
Yeah.
And then we'd go on hiatus for the winter months because it's too cold to be
So
outside.
is it like a 2-hour block maybe that you
So it's like an hour-long yoga class, and then we go inside and try all of their wine for like an hour, and mingle and talk, and they usually have snacks.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's so
And then the
fun.
yoga under the covered bridge came up because the owner of the restaurant actually does sup yoga with me in the summer. And she got my newsletter seeing that I was doing wine and flow. So she emailed me and was like, why don't we do this here?
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't even think about it.
My wheels are turning. I'm like, do you skate?
I don't. Not since I was a kid.
If you can do yoga on a paddleboard, you can do yoga on skates.
I don't know. I wasn't always the best skater. Would be fun though.
We're about 2 minutes left in the show, and this is the part that I like to hear a little bit more about you, where I ask people, what are the top 3 things that you do, or does it take for you to be totally well?
Yoga, of course. If I don't practice, then it just always feels like something's missing, something's off. Like my body doesn't feel as good, my mind is a little more
every
chaos.
single day?
Every single day.
Yeah.
In some way. I mean, in some days that might be a 2-hour asana practice. Some days that's getting on my mat and staying in downward dog for a couple breaths, or doing some cat and cow or some sun salutations. It really varies.
Yeah.
Depending on the day and how much time I have and my energy levels and my mood and all that. But yes, I practice yoga absolutely in some way every day. Nature, for sure. Being outside. I love camping and hiking and being in the mountains and connecting to nature that way. Taking my dog for a walk every day.
So what about like in the regular routine of life? How do you manage that? How do you you said taking your dog for a walk.
Yeah, I make time for it.
Yeah.
I think it's important to, it is. It has to be a priority to, I think, be happy and healthy and totally well.
I love it.
Cut out those chunks of time to be able to do those things. And if I don't take her, then she's like nudging me and whining at me.
I want to be totally well too.
Yeah, exactly. And the last thing, vegetables.
Yeah.
Eating healthy.
That's my girl.
Eating vegetables, yeah. So it's just, if I'm not eating healthy, if I'm eating not so great, then I don't feel good.
Yeah, so veggies are a big part. Do you have a favorite veg?
Favorite vegetable? That's a tough one.
I know.
I feel like it probably changes based on what the season is.
And it should.
Right now, I'm really into Brussels sprouts.
Yeah.
I love Brussels sprouts.
Do you cook them in the oven, roast them, or?
Sometimes I'll roast them. Sometimes I just do them in a pan.
Yeah, just pan fry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like them both ways.
Get them nice and crispy.
So I want to make sure people know how to reach you. So can you tell me again how people can reach out through your website and social media?
So mostly it's just my name, so KristenLamarre.com. If they want to find me on Instagram, it's Kristen Lamarre. On yoga, Kristen Lamarre Yoga, or on Facebook, Kristen Lamarre Yoga. If you're interested in SUP, it's Solar Flow, SUP, so solar like the sun, flow with a W, and then SUP.com. Same thing on Instagram and Facebook for that.
And I think you told me on Instagram you put some images of fun things that you're doing so people can really get the visual.
So I'll post pictures of different events that I do. I use Facebook to do events. I'll actually create the event on Facebook.
Yeah.
So that's also a good way to keep up with kind of different things that I'm doing, and if people want to come, different workshops and different events that I do as well.
And then do you put pictures of you doing yoga on Instagram?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Yeah.
And my dog. She's always making appearances in all the photos.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for coming today.
Thank
I
you
really
for
enjoyed
having
learning
me.
more about yoga and you, and I love the energy. I love just being near you because your energy is so powerful and
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Yeah, and calming at the same time.
Well, that's good.
So, yeah. Well, thanks again for coming to the Totally Well Show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.